Welcome to Highguard. Would you like to know more?
Would you like to know more?
Well,
To know more.
Great!
So, playable characters. You have many of the so-called playable characters
You must be the man with a bug for a brain.
with unique powers of a skill, an ultimate, and a special trait. Each skill can benefit the team that you are currently on at any point in the match, but they are on a cooldown. You always have to be aware of the cooldown and when you can best use your ability at the right time, at the right place, while also using the most effective weapon to ensure victory for your team, while being either a support or aggressive unit.
Philosophically, we are a gun-first game. We want to make sure that gun-on-gun combat is the primary way that you are succeeding in combat.
Alright, so Highguard's modes are basically 3v3 and 5v5 with 2 bases and a big map in between. I think my favorite mode was probably the Raid Rush mode. So this mode would eliminate all the busy work in the open map and you would just be teleported to your enemy's location. Flint, the shopkeeper, would basically sell you any and all equipment needed so you wouldn't have to go looking for it. It reduced the time dramatically. You would basically have more than enough players to keep the engagement there, and the challenge and the skill would shine the best. In my viewpoint, it was just the best the game was. Without all the other added stuff in the open map that would test my patience, I would be able to get right back into the game. It reduced the amount of time that I would be wasting, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's an okay start, and I think with more modes we can actually have a really good game on our hands. Except for the fact that this was only a limited time event for 1 week and was not intended to be part of the base game at all. That's right, this game is starving for content and modes and things for players to latch onto or do, and they removed a part of the game that could actually improve it, and they still did not have much content to be there in the begin with, not much modes, and more modes, less modes, it's probably not the main issue compared to the fact it's just that the players are starving for some variation, some level of enjoyment that isn't the same thing over and over and over again, some goal to chase after. And I think removing the Raid Rush mode was an indication that the developers had no clue on what the problem was or how the best ways to handle or solve the issues are, due to the fact that not only did they not release more content for the game, like more modes such as Raid Rush, but they removed this mode due to the fact that they thought it'd be a cool event, not something that is necessarily needed for the game to survive. There's no good gameplay loop, which is what they're missing. This was a way to add in a good gameplay loop, and there's no particular goal to chase after. Even with the ranking mode they added in, it's just not as much to chase after for normal players to want to continue playing. The customization for emblems, banners, and all the other stuff just is standard, but it's not enough for people to want to just stick around for, especially since they're not really that in-depth or cool. There was a time where I was walking into an enemy base and I saw an enemy unit, but I thought he was on my side because I did have that character on my side. And what's hilarious is he thought I was on his side for a second because there's a character on his side that I was playing as. So I found that really funny because we both kind of like delayed in our realization that we had to shoot each other. And that's the issue. The indications of who or what characters you are playing at is not underlined properly enough, which would be necessary for you to know which team they are on. Other games like Halo have red versus blue and you are colored the appropriate color. Games like Overwatch make it very clear on which side you are fighting on while being different characters. When you have team matches, you want to always ensure that you know where your team is, what your team is doing, or at least know who your team are, so you know who to fire on. So, world and bases. I would say this is a complicated subject when it gets into it, because there are probably more things to try to sort out on what's a good idea and what's a bad idea in this category. Bases wise, there is many locations that you can choose, and each of them comes with advantages and disadvantages. You have a total of 5 maximum walls you can enforce, and this will only delay the overall enemy advances. You have doors that you can open and close and go through. I think one of the bad things about bases is that I actually do not know where I'm going some of the time. You can get quite lost in some of the design of the base, and other times you just do not know where certain points are on the map. So when you think you're taking a shortcut, you end up at a dead end. Each base kind of has 3 points that you have to defend. Crystals that supply your base defense. These crystals are destroyed, your base takes damage. If the main crystal is hit, the one in the center, your entire base will go down. It is a game over through and through. Well, breaking and enforcing walls is an interesting idea. It is limited. There isn't actually anything else for you to do. You can't set up turrets, you can't create choke points, you can't enforce walls to be unbreakable, you can't even ensure that areas of the map is better accessible. There's no teleportation areas so you can quickly get to one point to another. There's not enough defensive capabilities to ensure its defense. Alright, let's talk about the matches. Each match can last as long as 10 to 30 minutes with 4 rounds at max and probably 2 at minimum. If you are very skilled, you can probably win within 1 match, but this is very rare. After 10 seconds, the game will allow you to go into the open world where you can mount up and search for treasure chests and crystals and speed gates. As you wait for the shield breaker to form, you can either group up with your team or split up for resources. At your own risk, you may even encounter enemy units depending on where you go into the map. Treasure chests often give you a random selection of a gun rarity. If you are in round 1, you will get a blue rare weapon. Round 2 will give you a purple epic weapon, which round 3 and 4 will have the legendary orange or yellow weapon. Mounting up. It reduces the overall time you are spending in the world, but it's also a little bit hard to control while you're unmounting, so most of the time you'll find yourself unmounting to gather resources and collect treasure chests. I think the most fascinating part of this whole thing is when the developers said they were working on mount combat.
There's this really strong fantasy of like being on a horse and just like shooting people. Very quickly that became like, oh, this is the sauce.
I think it kind of set the tone to where everybody was like, oh man, I want to like fulfill that fantasy.
Mounts were created for traversal at first, and then we were like evolving it to be more combat.
The open world is a totally different animal, right? Cover is really far apart, and it's a different kind of fight. And the way mounts incorporate into that combat is honestly super fun.
You want to have kind of like these rolling vistas that promote mount combat. You want there to be excitement to be able to like get out and go roam.
Alright, stop.
I have so many questions.
If the developers didn't want me to explore the map, then they shouldn't have made it this big. If they did want me to explore the map, then how come it seems like they hate me for exploring it? Mount combat is something I can guarantee most players don't do. Every time you're on a mount, you will find yourself getting off. And if you aren't, well, you will eventually. This is because of mount damage. Mount damage usually occurs when your mount takes too much hits, flinging you off the mount. This will stagger you and not allow you to shoot, and you might even be disoriented. But the biggest problem of all is you are exposed and probably going to die in a short few seconds. So because of this feature, mount combat usually ends up with you meeting an individual, or if someone's shooting at you, you will find the best place you can dismount and then take them out the old-fashioned way. If you are doing mount combat, you either have two options. You either escape or you get off the mount. Mount combat has more disadvantages because you're on the mount, because you don't have the capability to meet or aim at a proper target, especially when your target is behind cover, and you are more at risk of damage, if not being a bigger target, than your enemy is. Even if your opponent is on their mount, you'll find it not really that easy to always catch up with them, or in another way, it's not always easy to kill them on the mount. It's easier to actually just shoot their horse. But even then, they would probably get off it before you could do anything like that. I find that unmounting will give you a delay before shooting your gun, meaning the mount itself is just not useful whatsoever when you're in combat. Alright, the shield breaker. You can pick up the shield breaker, and your objective is to take it to the enemy's base and place it down into any of the specified slots, where it will send in the siege tower. If everyone on your team gets wiped out, the game will count that as a loss and begin the siege on your base. The game has a time limit on how long the siege will last, or a certain countdown on how many enemies must die before rooting out the enemies. Kill enough enemies or have the time run out, and the game will count that as a proper defense, and your enemy's base will receive damage. Alright, so the maps wise, maps are often too big to traverse at times, take too long to go around, and if you are going by foot, it may take a very long time to reach your destination. Even if it's like you're in the middle of the map and you're trying to get to one of the two bases, walking there will take a while. Traversal into the open world is actually annoying. As you know, mounts exist, but there's another idea of zip lines and speed gates, and those things don't work half as well. Even with the speed gates, I found just going through the world took so much time. What I think as a theory is, when they designed the mounts, they made the game a little bit smaller, but big enough for the mounts to traverse in a big area. But when mount combat became an idea that they were running with, they realized they might want to make the maps a bit bigger, with more open space for players to have mount combat catch up with them. The problem is, when they made these maps bigger, there were certain areas of the map that was just barren and empty, didn't have much to them, and felt as if they were just there, like someone wanted to expand space. It takes really long to traverse from one side to the map to the other, even with the mount. But you would think there would be a lot of freedom while traversing since there's so much space. That is where you would be wrong. You see, Out of Bounds exists in this game. When I got so bored playing the game, I started to mess around with some of the area and thought I wanted to see what I could do. And my first thought was heights. I want to get up somewhere high, maybe even sniper rifle a few enemies. You know, classic camping ideas. What I found was the developers didn't want you to do this, and so in areas of where they designed, where some areas you can't climb onto, or it will just shoot you off. I suppose that's understandable. It's not really appropriate for me to want to get too close to the edge of the map. I perfectly understand. And some areas are just too high for grapple hook to really latch onto, so that's also fair. But what about areas you can go onto very easily and aren't really that high?
Launching zipline.
Out of bounds. Okay, that's weird, but fine. What about that rock? You'll find that in many places of the game, the zip line in areas that it absolutely should be able to reach just doesn't want to. Almost as if the developers thought that they designed this area, but they didn't want the players to use the advantages of the area. And so they stopped me from actually going anywhere near it. I can't zip line to the top of this rock, even though it would be a good vantage point for me. And I can't go onto this light because... Actually, I've got nothing on that one. But how stupid that is for traversal, and how stupid that is just for basic freedom. They gave me the zip line, for goodness sake. What did you expect me to use it for? I was going to use it to my advantage. They decided, very stupidly, that I couldn't climb the siege tower. I was one of the unfortunate souls that was a giant, big, ugly monster, and I was wreaking havoc.
Today's Monday.
So I decided that I would climb onto the siege tower and try to kill the guy I couldn't reach. Nope, you are out of bounds of the raid. You must move yourself. And as such, when there was someone shooting on me on top of the siege tower, I couldn't get to him. My character didn't have any projectiles, and so I ended up dying. Well, that's really fun. But hey, is this like this always? Yeah, you can't climb the siege tower. You have like a quick period before it will immediately want you to get off or kill you. So, you can't climb the siege tower. There's many areas where it just doesn't want you to be at a certain height, so it will tell you to get all balance, and it will just constantly remind you that you are not playing the game right. You are playing someone's idea. So there are many times in the game that actually remind you that this world might be open, but it's not free for you to do whatever you want in it.
There are no 4 words in the English language more harmful to exploration than return to the game.
Airdrops. Airdrops usually come in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds, each round giving you more and more valuable weapons. Most valuable weapons, armor, and equipment. Flint the shopkeeper. Now, Flint is someone you can find in almost all of the open world and in your own base. In the siege tower, no matter where you look, he's there. And he supplies weapons for you and your enemy. It's quite confusing at times, but regardless, he is your friendly shopkeeper who charges you the crystals that you have mined. And in each round, he will increase his prices like any shopkeeper would. And he will sell you better equipment, guns, and gear. But all of which is on G. Each shop that you find gives you a different selection of items and goods. Guns. Well, in a fantasy game with modern guns that look like they could be in a real world.
I think everyone was on board with fantasy meets ballistic guns. We thought, okay, well, we don't want to do sci-fi. What is the other conceit that we could make? It's like, well, Magic will let us do that.
We wanted to integrate more fantasy elements into a shooter.
I don't understand this whatsoever. If you were making a game with guns that should be fantasy guns, you would think you would want to make them more fantasy-like. But that's fine, it's not a big deal breaker. Guns-wise, you have short range, mid-range, long range, and an axe. These are your basic kind of weapons, and you can choose between the three. RNG on weapons and armor on the good equipment, but you can start out with a loadout depending on how you wish to approach the situation. You can just choose your three main weapons, while the axe-wise is a thing that's supplied to every character. I found myself never really using it all too much for combat, mainly for the fact that I couldn't really find an opportune time to use it.
A warden's axe is a conduit of power and a symbol of what it means to be a part of the Iron Vigil. Wield it with honor, and may it serve you well.
An interesting thing to note is when you charge up your axe, you can actually use it to break down certain walls within the game. Guns vary between common and legendary, which each one contain certain perks, but I think many of you might not even know that certain perks change the feel of the gun with each rarity. Commons don't really have any perks whatsoever, it's a simple gun, but when you get to the epic or legendary, these are actually quite interesting to use. With the raid weapon, that being the zipline, rocket launcher, and sledgehammer, each one has two kind of variations. You have one more step over legendary. That gun is probably the only gun you can't get any other way. You have to get it from an airdrop. It's not possible to obtain it any other way. It is the fastest shooting gun. It's supposed to do a lot of damage. Alright, guns for example. When you do damage, at times, guns, armor, and accessories, you actually do not know how well these are going to match up.
Gives it a little kick.
Because of how the tactical gameplay works, you can pick up armor for your horse to increase speed, for your armor so you don't die in one hit, and for your guns to improve damage. As each match progresses, you get better and better equipment. But at other times, you often feel as if what you're doing doesn't really make much of a difference, and it either takes 5 seconds to kill an enemy, or other times you feel as if you don't really know if your armor did anything to protect you when you got killed. So unclear on how well your equipment affects battle. But I think the most funniest one of all is when I was using a rocket launcher, a shield, and I had the element of surprise, so I shot right at him. I died. I had the missile launcher. It didn't kill him. I took some damage apparently from that, and then I died.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Another time, I was playing, and I had the best equipment, legendary. I used a powerful weapon in the game. You can only get from airdrops, mind you. And I found an enemy. He was all by himself. I got this. There's no way he can win. I've got all the equipment I need to take him out. I've got the most powerful weapon. I even have boosted shields on top of boosted shields. He's using nothing more than an assault rifle.
Casting soul armor. I'm under fire. Urge to...
Okay, fine, I'm cool, I'm fine.
Isn't this fun?
Yeah, I died. I don't even understand why at some points you would go through all this trouble looking for all this loot, looking for all this useless garbage to put onto yourself to think you can have some chance of an edge in battle and still die.
My disappointment.
Nothing matters. Sometimes I feel as if all that time did nothing, and then it just wastes my time.
I will shoot this mortal man in the face!
Easy there, kid. Let's not. I mean, you couldn't shoot me if you wanted to.
And why is that?
One of the most powerful guns is actually the legendary sniper rifle, which I'm not even sure if many people actually managed to use. This thing is really amazing, to be honest. You have a long-range gun with high damage and constant firepower, and it is quite fast on the reload. It feels fantastic to use. You feel like an outright beast of nature, a hunter at its finest, able to gun down people with the best of precision and accuracy and deadly force get a headshot, and they most certainly will die. Even if you just do a body shot, they will be dead in 2 hits or more. The thing is, this gun is only available in rank 3 if you're lucky enough to find it, or if Flint is lucky enough to sell it at that time, or rank 4, which you have to actually be lucky if Flint gives you this gun as an option to buy, but it is still expensive, meaning you have to have enough crystals to buy it from him. The problem is, most of the players probably never even got to this gun. You can only get in round 3 if you're lucky, and even then, once you get to round 3 or 4, there's not much time to use it left in the match. There's hardly enough time to actually use this most powerful weapon in the game, and I would say there's a lot of outright fun you can have with some of the most powerful weapons in the game, but it just doesn't happen due to the fact that they're restricted to the certain rounds you can get them in. The loot might increase, but it doesn't mean it is always accessible. Once the loot increases, doesn't mean that you'll have access to the better weapons right away, which leads to an outcome where most players probably haven't even gotten to the most fun about this. So, the guns wise and equipment are being upgraded. That's not a bad idea in practice, but the execution is the fact that it just takes too long to get to those parts of the game, and if you get to those parts, you might not even be able to access those parts because it relies on RNG, and even if you get to that gun and you manage to get lucky with the RNG, you have to actually be able to use it in time before the match ends. If it's in round 4, the match is going to end like very soon. Just one hit from the shield breaker will end the match. If it's in round 3, it's most likely that you might have some time to use it, but you might not. And finally, I want to actually compare the fact that all the weapons in the game feel generic to use. The majority of the time you'll be using either rare or epic weapons. The legendary weapons might be fun, but even then they have some limit between fun and just tedious to use. And I was actually playing an old game called Star Trek Elite Force 2. I only meant to actually do one round, get enough footage for it, but I ended up playing through the entire round of 20 minutes.
Match started.
Was an impressive shot. Match over. You are the winner.
How the match kind of intensified the longer I went on, the more I could adapt, the more I can actually know what I was doing. Excellent kills, and I was just enjoying every second of it. With each gun I cycled through, each gun that I picked up, I had a limited amount of ammo, so my choices were I had to either cycle through my weapons, or I had to ensure that I was always keeping on top of my ammo supply, while also ensuring my health wasn't going down. This adding with armor in the game, and speed boosts, and armor gloves that improve damage, each of which have a time limit, and you would actually have to cycle through each of these things to keep on top to ensure that you would either survive as long as possible or hold the lead as much as possible. This game, in its 4 players, including you, I was playing against bots, but even with the bots, it was still quite enjoyable, and I found myself still dying to the bots many times. You would say that even with its age, it still holds up, and I can still play it today on GOG. Can I say the same about Highguard?
Last year's model.
That's cute.
Even if Highguard was a success, would it still be around in 20 years? Could the servers still stick around? Live service games can't stay around, and once they get shut down, they're not coming back because the experience was mostly online. Well, with Star Trek Elite Force 2, I can still play that game in its entirety on the story mode, and even play some of the matches with the bots. This game might be old, but it's still available for me to play, because it was also designed that way as well. Alright, we have to talk about the game modes. Game modes wise, you have the raid mode with 3v3 and 5v5. Now, it came to my attention that 5v5 was not on release date, but what's actually more bizarre is the fact that they weren't actually keeping 5v5. That was a decision because the fans wanted to keep 5v5. The developers were so disconnected from their audience, they didn't know what the problem was, and so when they added 5v5 just for a fun event, that they had to keep 5v5 because the players enjoyed that more. The existing players enjoyed that more. I don't know how they couldn't have caught this in the development stage, but I'm actually more blown away that they didn't actually do this because the game felt empty without. And next, there's just not enough game modes. Even if 5v5 was introduced, it's still not enough game modes. You have, in a general sense, a game that's lacking in stuff to do. 5v5 and 3v3 are basically like the same mode, but just with the amount of players. And when it released, it only released with 3v3, one game mode. Not like shooting range, which is really nothing, and the training mode you couldn't skip. A tutorial that you couldn't skip. I was one of the poor unfortunate saps that got kicked from the tutorial while I had to go and take care of something real quick, only to get back and find the game had kicked me from the tutorial and I had to restart the whole thing from the beginning. And then I could play the game. Well, that's fine. It was my fault for being indisposed, trying to keep up with other things in my life, and, you know, just being right back. And the game just decided, yeah, I don't want you to pause. Hey, at least it doesn't kick you from the main menu screen, right? Right?
No, what do you mean there's a clip of that? We have that?
Of course it does. They kick you from the main menu screen for being idle. The menu screen that's basically nothing. They don't want you to be looking at all of that. In all fairness, they do give you quite some time before they kick you, but regardless, I don't know why they need to kick you from the menu screen at all. Is it because it's always online? There's no single player whatsoever. So if you're ever thinking about trying out the characters, changing up characters, or just playing a match between bots, keep dreaming, because that's not happening. You're not going to be able to play this game with any bots, any NPCs, nothing, just real life people that act like bots. Alright, I want to bring your attention to the fact that one game mode is just not enough. Even if I can admit that this is your crowning jewel, this is the idea that you want to outright run with. Game modes wise, I think you need something else for the player to either achieve to try to aim for, or just have some sort of freedom for them to enjoy themselves. It's not enough to outright enjoy yourself. You have no battle royale. In other games, you have no capture the flag like Halo used to do. You have no smaller maps that did just crazy stuff. In Halo custom maps, there were sometimes just some crazy ideas where you get on back of the Warthog with missile launchers and just shoot each other, and your opponent might have a missile launcher car which you could drive from the back, so you didn't even need the driver. You could have like a match with only sniper rifles, or a match with only rocket launchers, or you could have a map where it was King of the Hill, or you could have a map where you could just fight each other with melee weapons. You could have just crazy ideas, and we're not even suggesting ideas that you needed to code in new stuff to supply. This all exists in Highguard. You could use the resources, use what assets you have, use the maps that you have provided the entire community. All of that still exists within the game, and you can just reduce the amount of stuff you're currently using in order to make it more simple, condensed, but also freedom on what elements you're trying to shine, such as the axe. What if there was only a match where you could fight with the axe? Or perhaps you wanted to outright ditch the guns and use superpowers instead, so you'd have to rely on your axe or some sort of melee weapon, while also having the ability to use your skills. Other ideas on how you can bring tactical thinking within each match. You can perhaps have a tactician who can supply airdrops to your team, or supply equipment, or boost over effectiveness of your team play. Say he boosts your weapons overall damage, but this will reduce their movement in a sense. Perhaps the enemy boosts their overall speed, but their damage dealt will be reduced. You could have interesting play like that. Perhaps you could have gameplay like Race to the Hill. Two teams start out in a similar location, but they have to race to a certain spot within the time frame, and then race to another spot while also trying to kill each other. Each person who gets there first earns a point to their team. These are all things you can implement within the contents and the idea of your game, and your world enrich in everything, and you don't have to code in anything really new that you don't already possess. The game modes are there, ready to be made. If you don't want to do them, give that power to your community, give them the tool sets. They will do all the work for you. You really don't have to do anything. The last thing I want to be talking about gameplay is the waiting. Well, let me just say, you don't have to wait on everything, but here's a small list of things you might need to wait on. Waiting to find a match. That might be a long one. Waiting to find players. Waiting in the lobby for players, to choose the players. For voting on a map. Waiting to be let out of your base. Waiting for the shield breaker. Waiting for your mount to take you around the map. Waiting after getting killed for a respawn. Waiting for the siege tower, waiting for the bombs, waiting to revive your teammates, waiting for your skill to be charged and your ultimate, waiting for a refund on your time, waiting for a better game to play. Oh, sorry, those weren't part of the list. Being forced back into the main menu screen besides rematch. In a sense, you have to outright, after a match ends, it takes you back to the main menu screen. Of course, with a loading screen you have to wait on, and then you can get to another match. I don't know why they couldn't just put a rematch button, or just find another match button after the game ends. You don't have to take me back to the main menu screen every time. And lastly, waiting to end your opponent.
After 19 actual real-time hours have passed, now you may take your dice and mark whoever is first place by setting it at a 1. What?
What is this? Elevator simulator? No, wait, I have a better one. Traffic simulator. Oh, how about this one? Ice Age simulator. Waiting in the game is probably one of the worst things that the game actually has. This is probably the biggest problem in the game, more than anything else that I can state, because even with all the issues the game possesses, it could actually still survive if the overall time spent was faster. You get to the locations faster, you fight your enemies faster, you have the overall time to respawn faster. You are not on a constant waiting period, because waiting means I can't do anything, and if I'm not doing anything, why am I playing this game? I should not be waiting half the game. I should not be waiting on half the match. If I spend 30 minutes on the match, I should be expecting to do something for at least 20 minutes, if not 25. Instead, I'm spending 15 minutes waiting for something, while the other 15 is waiting for something else. Waiting is probably the thing that killed the game, because in every sense, in every small area, in every small section, even down to the supply drops, to the shield breaker, to your team, to the idea that if you want to do anything, you have to wait. 1 second? 2 seconds? No. You have to wait a good 10 seconds at the minimum for anything and everything. Alright. Customizing your character and your guns. Now, this is probably what they wanted you to aim or progress for. For Overwatch, your characters looked interesting, fun, expressive, attractive, so you always wanted to get cosmetics for them. Same with Marvel Rivals, same with Halos, same with other games. Any game you can think of with cosmetics, you just have the sense of coolness or attractiveness. When you customize something, you want to customize it in something cool, and something fun.
What the are you wearing?
It's my outfit.
But most of the cool outfits are locked behind a paywall, and anything else is just a variation in color skin.
That looks pretty bad. I guess we'll have to paint it. Can't take chances with any of them streptococcuses, you know.
You have nothing to aim for. There's no coolness. There's nothing for you to chase after that is expressive, that is attractive.
That make you feel tingly?
That makes you feel anything other than hollowness. The customization for your character is the thing they want you to grind for, is the thing they want you to chase after for. Not because they really want you to, but it's because it's the only thing to do.
It's unsalted and unbuttered, right? And unpopped.
Because if you chase after goals, you get money. Money can actually be exchanged
for goods and services.
And then you can use that money to buy alternate skins for your gun that you don't care to use. You can also use that currency to buy alternate outfits that you don't really care about. It really is just a color skin. That's it. And even if you find your way with enough currency, what does that really matter? You don't look at your character because it's first person. It really is just for the opponent to look at you.
I just wonder if he's as dumb as he looks.
This is like the creators reaching through the screen for a piece of my soul. Not because they want it or anything, just so they can make me feel anything.
The only victim here is me, for having to sit here with you wasting my time.
Okay, the story. Now this is a part of the entire game that I probably should have talked about much sooner. If you aren't aware, Highguard has a lot of story in this game, down to the mounts.
All across Highguard lie mysterious glyph strands bearing strange and wondrous properties when stimulated by sound. Many wardens have learned to wield some of these lost frequencies, enabling them to summon forth echoes of creatures both past and present. These ancient structures mysteriously activate for riders when a shield breaker is nearby. Ride through them when active to grant your steed a mighty burst of speed.
Down to the axe.
Featuring a head of forge welded Vesper steel, a curved heartwood handle, and a purge spike pommel. For over 1,000 years, the blacksmiths of the Iron Vigil have refined their techniques to create this ultimate companion for wardens in the field.
Small information about weapons.
Due to current manufacturing constraints, big rigs are hard to come by. Keep your eyes on the sky for airdrops delivered by yours truly.
Backstory and all the other stuff down to each character, except for the last one they released because that one didn't get much of a description on who he is. I think what's also interesting, but yet not really as known, there's small dialogues depending on which characters you have on your team that comment and discuss a small topic together.
Hey, Addie. I know we're both not the biggest Vigil fans, but I never forgot what you taught me when I first enlisted.
How to hit a target at long range?
They took away my optics, and I still outshot our entire class. No lessons required there. But when you left, it taught me that we are all masters of our own fate. That lesson stuck. Reinforcing the wall.
Glad it helped. Even if my lessons on humility did not.
Oftentimes, this is also weirdly quiet. I can't hear it half the time.
Who knows? They told me you left behind your dying place to save it. Now I'm forever.
Yes. I will never again see sunlight.
10 seconds to go. Let's take this one home, group.
But if I succeed in my quest, it will be enough to know that because of my deeds, the wild wait and my people endure.
The shield breaker is forming soon. Explore and gather anything you need.
The Highguard story basically goes like this. There's an ancient world that was lost through time. It suddenly appeared, and that place is called Highguard.
A vanished continent of myth, rich in resources, treasure, and secrets, was suddenly just there.
Every map, every location has its own history. It is quite fascinating to listen to some of the lore they have.
It is said a great queen once ruled over a golem army forged within the burning heart of the mountain.
Each character has their own history as well.
Demon, Dark Fiend,
The mysterious conjurer Mara has been called many things.
They have much information explaining all of the characters and all of the world and all of the story, and I'm sure everyone should be happy to know that, or not happy, none of this is in the game. I had to go looking for the lore and the story of Highguard on the YouTube page, because none of it is really much described, and even with the small details you have in the character descriptions, that doesn't tell you that much about them. And small dialogues they have between the characters when you first start a match is small parts of story, but if I'm being fully honest, the story of Highguard is a little fascinating, and yet feels as if it was an afterthought. So why aren't there any creatures or any other mobs or NPCs in the game other than Flint the shopkeeper? Well, they have an explanation for that.
When Highguard first returned, everyone rushed to this land, and they all died. It became clear that the only ones who could survive in this magical land are those with that gift of magic.
That's right. Everybody died. So, what brings the wardens to Highguard?
And they are brought to this place by a mysterious organization called the Iron Vigil.
At first, when you meet the Iron Vigil, they are the ones who help bring you to the land of Highguard.
They're in a position of power because they broker all of the contracts that the wardens take on. You see all of these characters being drawn like a moth to the flame to Highguard, and over time, you're going to see how big that flame gets.
Today we're sharing difficult news. We have made the decision to permanently shut down Highguard.
Yes, and all this stuff in Highguard is highly valuable. So, I just have one question. You got the backstory of your world set. You have the reason why there's no NPCs or mobs. You even have the Iron Vigil to explain and supply stuff to everyone. They just have one small, tiny, little problem. Why are they fighting each other? These idiots are fighting for land to blow up each other's bases that is filled with resources, knowledge, and stuff that is highly sought after by all parties, and this stuff goes by the millions on how much they've described this ancient world and its power and its value. There's no way you can convince me that these people are fighting each other by contracts for this ancient artifact world, and they're blowing each other's bases up for this, and they're all somewhat buddies as well, just under certain contracts. What in the world are you guys doing? Why on earth do you have a story that, like, at the one core thing you needed to get right, you fumble the bag? The reason why you're fighting each other, why is that? There is no reason. The game just wants that to be the case. They also want to hint a larger story behind it. So it's like these two conflicting interests. One in which they want a larger story with a looming darkness.
He's here to save the world against the coming darkness.
Or in live service game speaking, the next expansion. And then they want the outright disconnection from the story. When you realize, why are you fighting each other? Well, we have no clue on that, actually. I think one of the funniest outright character descriptions was probably Scarlet. I actually enjoyed playing Scarlet as a character, but I could not get over the fact that her description in the video was really funny.
Once a princess from the desert kingdom of Essence, Scarlet left her throne behind to become a hero for the Iron Vigil, with a heart that's just as beautiful. She's known throughout the realm as the Warden of the People, because she could have had it all, but gave it all up to look out for the little guy instead.
That's right. So, they've described her as selfless. Let me just lay this down for everyone who might not understand this. Scarlet is a princess of a nation. She, in turn, left her nation for the adventure of Highguard. She left her people, she left her kingdom, she left her responsibilities to go on adventures in Highguard where she can have the freedom, no responsibilities, have so much riches. It is actually insane in how much value Highguard has, that she could probably start her own new kingdom with the amount of money she could earn from just working in Highguard. She could probably support her own kingdom for several years with the amount of money she could make in Highguard. She is, in a sense, what I would describe as selfish. She chases after the riches, she left her responsibilities, and she absolutely is someone who abandoning her people for the fame and wealth of Highguard. I don't know what the story guys are doing, but I think they're a little bit confused on the words. So, to sum things up, the story in Highguard is just confusing, doesn't make a lot of sense, and you just gotta go with it. Most people didn't even go through the story because you have to look it up on YouTube pages, and I think you're actually better not knowing the story of Highguard. You'd live much happier playing the game without it. Alright, so I want to talk about indie games and live service games.
The power of independent, self-published studios to push this medium forward is a growing and I think positive theme in our industry.
Indie games definition: indie, independent games or video games created by individuals or small teams without financial or technical backing from major publishers. Defined by creative independence and artistic freedom, they often feature unique, experimental gameplay or art styles, frequently self-funded or crowdfunded. Key characteristics of indie games include independence. Creators maintain control over creative and financial decisions. Team size, usually developed by 1 to 30 people, including solo developers. Funding, self-funded, crowdfunded, or supported by small independent publishers. Distribution, primarily sold via digital storefronts like Steam, itch.io, Epic Games Store, and console digital shops. Scope, ranging from experimental, short projects to large, complex titles, e.g., Stardew Valley, Among Us, Celeste. While sometimes characterized by lower budgets and pixel art, the term now covers a broad spectrum of production values, often focusing on innovation over the mass market appeal of AAA games.
You must be the man with a bug for a brain.
Live service games usually don't have a 90% drop-off within the first 2 days, if not first day, and the week, and as it goes on, keeps dropping. Live service games usually always have a in-game store.
There will be a ton of loot!
Since some of them are free to play, you would expect cosmetics and stuff. It helps keep the game alive, but there usually has to be enjoyment, fun, engagement, or something for people to chase after. And they have to like your company enough to give you money.
What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah!
Kicking you out of the tutorial for being too idle, or even in the main menu screen, might get you get frustrated. Many people didn't even finish the required tutorial, which, I'm gonna be honest with you, you shouldn't have made that requirement. You could have saved a portion of your player base if you didn't do that part. Alright, we should probably talk about the elephant in the room. Being announced at the Game Awards.
It is insanely fun to see, fun to play, as you saw in that trailer.
Underestimated me and the element of surprise!
Potentially being funded by Tencent. Now, many articles say this was confirmed that the secret backer was Tencent. And, going through the understanding of how much money that this costs to make a live service games just for the servers, yeah, I'm gonna go on a limp on, even if it wasn't Tencent, you must have gotten that money somewhere from some backer. That's a lot of money. They outsource some of their team. Now, outsourcing isn't uncommon, but if you're a small development team, you want to always be able to talk to everyone. You want to know exactly who they are, what they do, what they're specialized in. If you have like a lot of people, like maybe 100 or more, now they say they started out with 40 or 60 and they grew from there. And I don't know how many they brought in or let go over the time, but on the page, including leadership, it came out to 103 people on their list. And they outsourced some of these people. Was said to be a new breed of shooter. A new breed of shooter is a bold claim, but usually I don't know if you should advertise a new breed of shooter, because if you say that, you get people's expectations high. Well, another part was they were developers of Apex Legends and Titanfall. This already brings you a lot of favor because those games are remembered highly and they are liked. So you basically invite a lot of people into your game by reassuring them that they know how to make a game. They know what they're doing. They can provide you something that you like. You're stating in that statement,
You can have my gun when you pry it from a cold dead.
You are putting on yourself a label of the respect and the prestige on these other games, and you're taking that for your development team, trying to state, we are experienced, we worked on these previous games, we know what we're doing, guys, we're making a better breed of shooter, we're going to improve our overall standing, we're going to create something new, and we are going to make something you haven't seen before.
I'll bet the kids will have a great time, and if they don't, who cares?
That's the sort of attitude you betray, and already we have expectations being risen so high, so they're going to need to outright be able to deliver something truly interesting, engaging, or fun. They managed not to do this. With a 90% drop rate, I don't think they succeeded. There's a lot of issues with Highguard, such as its gameplay, such as its outright combat. You need that content there day one, and if you say you can't do that day one, then you should delay it. If it's going to take the time to fix, then take the time. And if you say you don't have the time, well, maybe you shouldn't have made a live service game. Especially with your first release. Live service games are basically the idea of they are cowards, but they're greedy cowards. Shooter games or other kind of games usually stick to a format of finding the easiest, most marketable kind of game possible while being a live service. And it's just terrible.
I don't like the way he looks. I'm hurt. And I don't like the way he dresses. Hey, just for that, I'm going to date your daughter.
Live service used to have an idea of a game that was being in development, and the developers knew that they couldn't reach the best quality game within the time frame they had, and so they thought about improving the game in a way that players could both still enjoy it while in the development cycle, and delivering a top quality game with more improvements and more time, care, and attention. Over time, this shifted with the amount of money that live service could make, if done right, to development teams being forced to make live service games when they had no previous experience doing so, and they wanted to make a live service game, and their live service games coming out buggy and janky and poor quality with promises of improving the basic features that should have been there on launch day, missing out on a lot of content, putting it behind paywalls, or just not implemented it properly, bugs and stuff being patched day one. There was just a whole bunch of problems live service games were getting away with because they promised to improve it, when those sorts of games should have outright released in a quality state and then improved upon due to the fact they were working on improving the game's quality and keeping its overall lifespan alive.
We knew when we started we wanted to make a shooter, and we knew we wanted to make something that was live service. And so we've been planning for that for a very long time. In fact, we already have a year's worth of post-launch content already deep in development.
There's a lot of live service fatigue right now, right? These games tend to hit you with a FOMO, which I think players have gotten wise to, for good reason. We're building a game that people want to come back to.
So the way our post-launch plan is broken up is what we call episodes.
Yeah, I did not edit that out of context. They literally do not have an answer for the fatigue of live service games.
So each episode will be roughly 2 months broken into 2 halves. We'll have a part 1 and a part 2. With launch, we'll have a special occasion with an episode 1, and that'll bring 5 maps, 6 bases, 8 wardens, 10 weapons with 11 mods that change up how those weapons play, over a dozen other items in the loot pool, and 3 raid tools, all at launch day.
In the name of my most royal majesty, I knight thee.
It is insanely fun to see, fun to play, as you saw on that trip.
And a whole lot of passion and fun.
$40.
Arise, sirloin of beef. Arise, Duke of Brittingham. Arise, essence of myrrh, Duke of magnesia, quarter of 10.
He says that as if getting all that content shouldn't be standard, and yet he's presenting it like a actual special offer that we are benefiting from. All that should be there day one. I should expect that there day one without any exceptions. As a matter of fact, I have more criticisms on the fact that that is quite little content.
Then, just in a couple of weeks, we're going to have episode 2, which kicks off with a new warden, a new mount type, a brand new map, and we're really excited to bring our first new mode, Ranked, to the table. So that'll be coming in 2 weeks. And then from there, we'll be in our regular cadence.
Don't make promises you can't keep.
Yeah, but those are the best kind.
What?!
And of course, their solution on how to deliver a live service to you with the fatigue of the market is to give you the live service that is the same like anyone else in the market. Basically, drip feeding you content.
We're building a game that people want to come back to.
Got a better idea. I'll leave.
I don't understand live service games and the process and the thinking that over-delivering is somehow a bad thing. Nevertheless, they continuously do the same stupid actions time and time again without any recourse or consideration of what the players might want or might be in favor of. They constantly drive away the casual gamer, who is usually the majority, and then they just pander to anyone who's left who will give them money. On the other hand, they expect their players to come back over and over as long as they drip feed content to them. Well, most people are tired of outright having so many live service free-to-play MMOs, mobile games that expect the same thing. Constant logins, constant coming back, constant rewards, dailies, all that weekly battle passes, whatever you even want to consider, constant rewards, just log in. That gets tiresome, and that gets frustrating to deal with time and time and time again. There's only so many hours in a day, so many games to play, and so much you actually want to invest in. You expect your players to stay for a long time, even though you provide them very little to stay for. While other games do not do live service or are not online, give you content and even over-deliver at times, but they provide you an experience that you can play at your own time, at your own pace, and you could have more fun with a game that gives you everything you need at launch day, with only a few patches here and there for performance issues, and you can have an experience that is not only enjoyable all the way through, but one in which you keep coming back for.
Surrounding yourself with high walls makes things simple, but simplicity isn't always a virtue.
Now, I brought up Star Trek Elite Force 2. That game was over 20 years old, but you can even think about any other game. Single-player games. You even have Halo. Those games, they've survived maybe a decade or more. They are still playable. Live service games, no matter which one you think of, even the mighty giants such as Fortnite, Roblox, Apex Legends, Battlefield, Call of Duty, Genshin Impact, Weather and Waves, and games like that, there's no way these games can last forever. Even if they last for a decade or more, they will eventually close down. And when someone wants to replay them, they can't. Even sites like GOG that wants games to stop shutting down or want to preserve certain games, live service games out of all the selection of games are the hardest to probably try to preserve, such as MMOs and on mobile games. Mobile games can actually be preserved in some shape or form, but not live service games. Online mobile games, MMORPGs, and live service games, when the server shut down, the game is pretty much gone. It's very hard to ever bring that back because the fact is they are always connected to the internet, and if you ever remove that, then you cannot play the game. It almost doesn't exist without it. And so, these lifespans for these live service games, the more there are, the less they will stay around. They live off the money just to keep the lights on. They cannot survive. They are quite profitable, which is why we keep seeing more and more live service games. They are very profitable. They bring in thousands upon thousands of dollars at the bare minimum when they're successful, millions if they're really successful, and
$6 billion a year.
If you want to take a nice slice of that pie. Everyone's chasing after that top dollar, but they don't realize the more people there are, the less money that will go around. And that's if it goes around. What you do is you saturate the market. The market gets tired of that and they move on. When once they move on, all that money is going with them. And all your effort you put into this service game is not going to mean anything if you can't make anything out of it.
Highguard.
You wanted to make this for money, and that's the last thing you're probably going to be getting, because no one wants to outright spend a lot of time and effort in the game that is going to be gone probably in a week or two, or a month, less than a year, and then they're not going to want to outright support or play a game that's just not really anything to it. Live service games as a whole is a dying genre, and yet it is probably the best example of the industry as a whole. You look at live service games, and that's what they're trying to chase. Top dollar, easiest to make, live service, AI generated stuff as much as they can, just make it as easy as possible to make. They want live service games. They want to make them accessible, they want to make them easy to get into, and they want them to be as profitable as possible. They want these games to be absolutely the epitome of their focus. They will turn any single player game, they will turn any IP, they will turn anything into a way to monetize it. They will see a problem with game design, with story, with anything else, they throw money at it, they move on. They don't understand the process of making them. I really think I should bring up Destiny, because when Destiny first started out, it was starting out as an ambitious game, and it was trying to focus on how to improve as its lifespans went on. It wanted to be a video game with constant support, new updates, and better outright performances. Everything they would bring, and there would be a constant update on fixes, improvements, and just a better game overall once you got to the end. That was their goal. They wanted to make Destiny the best that it could do, while also continuously supporting Destiny for all the people who were playing it. Noble intentions, but as they say, the road to hell is often laid with good intentions. Even with the best intentions of Destiny, it didn't turn out that way in the end. We have reasons to believe of what the outright design was with Destiny. Now, I don't think Destiny was the main starter, but it was one of the pieces that started the whole thing, making the industry as we know today. Genshin Impact and Fortnite were probably the biggest indicators that live service games were indeed profitable. The easiest genres and trends, latch onto those and make them live service. Once you do that, make them a grind fest. It became more about how can we make games where players will pay us to play and constantly play, and ideas of what we can do for fun turned into what can we do to stretch the time between the amount of play. If you play Genshin Impact or anything like this, you know of the battle passes, you know of the daily rewards, you know about every small aspect, but what you don't know is how much grind stuff they actually have you do. Events come like every month or so to try to keep you from falling asleep in a sense, and other times they just stretch out the story, they stretch out the expansion, they stretch everything out longer than it needs to be. They give the enemies more damage, they give them more health, they give them everything, so the player is just stuck there chasing rewards, chasing items, chasing cosmetics, chasing anything that just makes the time they spend with this live service less fun but more tolerable. As time goes on, the game that they first played with much promise becomes more of a game that they tolerate, with all the outright problems that have never been addressed, fixed, or managed, because you would know that they can't do too much unless it would basically destroy the foundation they are creating or created. Plus, they have to account for new players coming in, and then they have to think of the old players that are coming in, so it becomes unbalanced in the sense of difficulty or just pure odd sensation where you are dominating in fights, but in other times, you are so low leveled you cannot win. It's bizarre in some cases because you don't really know what you're supposed to do or where the difficulty is supposed to be. Chasing after RNG loot, RNG characters, RNG everything, anything it takes to stretch as much game time as possible. So when you think about buying anything from the online shops, is to make the experience more tolerable, because the experience you have is very boring, it's very simple, and all the fun activities you're doing are far in between all the busy work of the grinding you'll be doing. So it doesn't reduce the grind, but it does indeed, when you buy any cosmetics or anything at all, it makes makes it feel less frustrating. Live service games are that in a nutshell, but they are very profitable in that way because it plays off of the worst attributes that anyone has, which is addiction, attraction of anything that looks cool or attracting, and lastly, gambling, which is a bad habit to have at all. Alright, last but not least, let's talk about the indie games. This game was advertised as a small group of developers, an indie studio that didn't have much going for it, but it was going to buck the trends and change the format, and it's going to be a new breed of shooter. It was going to be the next breed of shooters.
Our final world premiere comes from 61 members of the team that built Apex Legends and Titanfall. 4 years ago, the principals founded a new independent studio with the hopes of pushing the shooter genre forward with a new original game. They've done it in complete secrecy, which is even more amazing because the game is very deep into development. The power of independent, self-published studios to push this medium forward is a growing and I think positive theme in our industry.
You're unstable, unreliable, and frankly, I question your motives.
I've played it, and after you see this trailer, I think you're going to want to as well. It is insanely fun to see, fun to play, as you saw in that trailer.
Only a fool hires another fool to do a professional's job.
It was going to be paved the way by these ex-devs of Titanfall and Apex. They were going to make a name for themselves. They had their own brand and everything. They were going to be like the underdogs. They were going to be the underdogs of the year. They were going to just be everything you expected for the best quality games that can be provided by a small team, showing that not only can small teams make fantastic games, but they can do so with just pure passion and love for the game. Not only can they do so, but they will achieve something great. And that is what Wildlight drove for. An outright new way of live service game. Something that they promoted quite heavily. This was going to be a shooter game. This was their bread and butter. They were the best at making shooter games. They knew what they were doing. They knew it was going to be a live service this whole time.
We knew when we started we wanted to make a shooter, and we knew we wanted to make something that was live service.
There's no way that this could fail, right? I mean, the entire team was passionate on this project. They loved this idea. They've looked only for the fun.
Every playtest, there is buckets of feedback. We pride ourselves on finding the fun, and it's sacred when you find it.
With their video, you would think that this is everything you need, basically. Let me just bring you to the list of stuff they had before they released Highguard. Jeff Keighley promoted it as its last slot trailer.
Our final world premiere.
It apparently was backed by Tencent, and even if it wasn't, someone with deep pockets must have backed them. It was ex-Titanfall and Apex devs, meaning they had plenty of experience on their hands here. Team was over 103 people by Wildlight list. It had 97,000 players on its release. This game had all of the advantages given to it. It was given every reason to succeed, and it had many parts of the industry backing it and supporting it, and they still failed. Let me drive your attention to an actual indie game that did not have any of this. A game called Katawa Shoujo, a visual novel developed at a time when visual novels were not as popular as they were now, and made by a group of people who were pretty much strangers. So the development goes like this. A group of people see a post and they think it would be cool if this game actually existed. It becomes an open development suggestion nightmare. 4 months of just spanning all ideas and then becomes silent. With only a small group of developers still interested in the idea and becomes a closed-off development team. With a small group in order to try to make this game over a course of potentially 5 years or more. And each of the developers are not getting paid, never worked on a visual novel before. Many of them don't even have experience making or coding games. And so, they may decide to make a 60-hour-long visual novel. This game was made for free, and you can still get it for free on their website or on Steam, with a free soundtrack included. This game was not after money its entire time. And so, I want to bring up a video from Gigak, and I'll link it down in the description for you. This video has a small moment that I think sums it up best.
Katawa Shoujo stands as a unique anomaly of its time we may never see again. I've seen school projects crumble for less. This was a project made by a team with no experience, no budget, no guarantee their work would ever be seen. Fueled by pure passion, but it wasn't just passion that got this project made. This game was teetering on a knife's edge for most of its development. From conception to completion, so many unlikely things needed to come together, so many serendipitous events needed to happen, so many stars needed to align for this thing to not only come to fruition, but be as incredible as it was. And that is the miracle story of Katawa Shoujo.
It really does take a unique quality. You need really three major things. You need passion, love for what you're doing. You need money to help support or at least keep the lights on in some way, shape, or form. And finally, you need direction. You need to know where you are going. To try to bind all these three things together, to keep them together and support them so they can move in the direction where the game can come out, but also be good when it comes out. So it has a sense of quality, hard work, passion, and a care and attention every step of its development phase. And it's not chasing after anything but these things. If you do not focus on the three major things to manage, then your game will fail. If not with the development cycle, then with the audience. You can find this in other indie games as well. Stardew Valley, made by one guy. Terraria, Minecraft, Tetris, Undertale, Expedition 33. There's all these different indie games designed, developed by groups of individuals, or even just one guy with passion, understanding, maybe not even knowledge if the product or the game will ever be released, and even if it is, how well that will be received, but just a constant pursuit over what their vision or what they want to do is. Not just to be the next big thing, but just to be what it is. Stardew Valley didn't change how farming games worked. Matter of fact, it brought a lot of what farming games were and just it shined up the best qualities of it. So when other people saw that, they wanted to play more farming games. I appreciated what Stardew Valley had, not what it didn't have. I wanted to play more games like Stardew Valley because of what Stardew Valley had. Minecraft is like Legos, but in a video game. Just anything you can imagine, build it, create it, design it. It's literally your imagination, your freedom, your overall understanding and how the world works in order to create some of the most interesting and creative ideas brought to life, all for you.
As a child, I yearned for the mines.
Tetris is a game that's just about calm, peaceful, and yet at times challenging blocks with a good rhythm to understand how you can best organize things in the most effective way and sometimes in a fast way. Each game offers you a different thing. They might even branch out to new things at times, but what's most important is they don't try to abandon their core element, and usually when they step too far away from that, people notice. Some of the best games in the world were made by people who they started out with a small team. Most of the greatest industries, companies, or what name you, they started out small. They built their way up. They started with an idea. They didn't want to be something they weren't. They might change into that later on, but they don't start that way. Usually, it's about finding the things you're passionate about and polishing those things to the best of your ability. And usually in indie games, I find that the things that they're trying to show me, the things I'm experiencing, the games I'm playing, is often just all different from one another. When I play Hollow Knight, it's not the same when I'm playing Stardew Valley. These aren't the same kind of games. I'm fine with that. You can see what the game is trying to express to you as you enjoy it. In the general sense, just want the experience to be the best it can possibly be. With what tools they possess, the limitations is not often bad. Limitations can actually make something that seemed simple, easy, and they can make it into something unique to that product on its own. Stardew Valley's outright visuals is timeless to me. Same with Minecraft. I don't want that visual style to change. The limitations can actually create its own unique style or own unique design so much that it's almost impossible to imagine a game without that look. indie games are the best the industry has to offer. Alright, conclusion. Hooray, we're finally here. I can't believe it either. The game overall is bad. Not because its gameplay is bad. Its gameplay can sometimes be quite enjoyable. I see what they were aiming for with the overall raid and how they wanted to have tactical thinking into the game. How they wanted every match to be different in a sense. I see a lot of Highguard's flaws and I say this game isn't the worst thing I've played. It's just boring. It's generic. I have played a game better than this. I have played many games better than this. And I don't want to play Highguard anymore of how much stuff it expects me to tolerate just because developers thought that this was fun does not mean that I think it's fun. Do I want the game to fail? No. But if it fails, I'm not really going to cry over it or lose any sleep.
After careful consideration, I've decided not to endorse your park. So have I.
It is, in a sense, disappointing more than anything else. You would hope for a game to be good, and yet, again and again with these live service games, what the industry thinks that the market wants, over and over, it is just tiresome. I believe that Highguard is basically a great way of learning a lesson. Well, for one, people thought it was like Concord 2. It does seem really funny that Concord 1, and then you have Highguard being Concord 2, and of course there's a Concord 3 that's potentially coming out. How Concordian of you. No matter how well this game would have performed at the start, the game's quality is still lacking in many senses of the word. You can't really expect an audience to be there when there's not much to be there for. You can't expect praise and adoration for hard work when you don't have much to show for it, or the fact is, nobody really cares at the end of the day if you worked hard on a project. They care about the end result. And if your end result is barely anything, and you refuse to listen to any criticism, or you refuse to outright take any advice from the players who are trying to give you some, then there is no way that your game will be sustaining any kind of long-lasting audience, because there isn't anything for them to really have that can be long-lasting. Highguard is disappointing. It's sad to see a game like this. It's just not a great video game as a whole. It lacks a lot of features that would help this game continue. It wastes half your time waiting all the time. There isn't really much for players to see or do. Once you play one match, you basically have already played all of the Highguard. I wish I could say I was surprised seeing this in the video game industry, but I'm not. It's just another thing on top of the pile of constant slop. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you in our next potential project that I'm thinking of doing, if you're interested. I also have a second channel where I just post random video game videos. Of course, I haven't been able to do that recently because I was working on this video. But I post once in a while over that channel. Less edited videos, but hopefully when I get a good routine down, I can have a good rotation between the two channels. Well, easy videos to make and more of the discussion videos. And of course, I'm still improving, so I'm sure you spotted many problems in the video, and I appreciate it if you tell me how I can best improve. Have a great day, and Lord bless.
Put all this love into a project and feel like you went to battle together, and to put that creative project in front of the world to play and get the feedback and see the joy it brings people, you just want to keep doing that.
Well, somebody better be dying.
I'm dying.
You have more than 2 hours in this game?
You are worse than a scooter rider.
Oh, wait a second.
Lost. Lost what? I've lost my marbles.